You guys all ready? Okay. I'll just give a quick update, and I'm sure you guys have a lot of questions, a lot of activity going on. For those of you that didn't make it, kudos to a few. Robin, you get an extra point. Stephen popped in earlier in the week too, and I know there's a lot of stuff going on, so I'm just giving you a hard time. But we released a workforce bill earlier in the year, or earlier this week, looking at expanding our job training and apprenticeship programs here in the state. I think it's something that we've worked with a lot of groups that are the ones that are filling those workforce needs, took their ideas, put those together in a package, and I think it's something that we are taking very seriously. Want to continue to address the workforce issue. So just wanted to touch on that, having some different faces here today, but otherwise I'll open it up, and just so you guys are aware, I'll do the best I can to keep up with all the bills that are moving and a lot of activity. Prep pretty well on a lot of those, but if I miss one, we can get you some follow-up, so go ahead.
I'd sort of like to start with, I was in the House Education Committee last night, and they passed a bill that would say students don't have to be vaccinated to attend school, and get rid of Iowa's vaccine requirements for school children that have been in place for several decades. That's a pretty big change, right, and that would affect a lot of families. Is that something that you think House Republicans should consider?
And that's something, as it moves through the committee, it's something we'll obviously take to the full caucus. I think you're seeing at the national level a lot of talks about vaccinations. I think as we're looking at this, we just need to be mindful that we're not getting too far ahead of what the federal government does. At the same time, recognizing there's a lot of conversations going on with vaccines and vaccine schedules. So I think that's something we need to continue to talk about, but I don't think there's a final decision made on what the actual bill may end up being. I don't think we're in a position where we've reached a conclusion of what that may be. I think it's worth the conversation, but I don't think that we're at a point where I can give you a firm answer with it right now.
Also from the House Education Committee, let me know if I'm talking.
No, you're good.
But they believe advanced a bill that would extend the law that bans instruction on sexual orientation from 6th grade. Since that law is already being challenged in court, what do you think about potentially extending it while the legal battle hasn't fully played out yet?
Yeah, and again, kind of similar answer to that. There's a lot of members in our caucus that have interest in that topic. And we've passed a bill obviously through K6 as you're referencing. I think there's a lot of members of the caucus think that that's a reasonable place for us to be. So again, I would look at this a bill that's going to have a lot more discussion before it would just move to the floor and see where the consensus of the caucus is. If they think we're in a good spot or we want to go further.
Following up on that, Bill, I heard some concern from somebody at a community college that there are so many high school students who take classes at community colleges, and if you say there can't be any curriculum or instruction related to gender theory or sexual orientation, then that could be really limiting for a lot of college level courses. What are your thoughts on that?
And again, that's why we landed on the K6 that we did originally in the bill, because there were concerns that were brought up for some of those as you go through the grade levels. And I think that's why we're going to see what that conversation looks like. And I don't think there's necessarily consensus within the caucus on where we would go at this point.
There was a bill in advance for a House subcommittee this morning. It's really just like banning getting rid of affirmative action and state stuff, but there's part of it that would remove a law that requires annual bias prevention and de-escalation training for police, and that was passed in 2020 unanimously in the House. Is that something you're interested in? And I guess why repeal a law that was passed unanimously?
Yeah, I would say first of all, just the concept of what the bill's trying to achieve is looking at a merit-based system. I think you've seen us looking at that in a lot of other conversations we've been having, like around higher ed and other things. So I think that's part of why we're continuing this conversation. Obviously, the bill is just moving through subcommittee. We know there's more work that needs to continue to be done with it. That's why we had a subcommittee this morning on that topic. Unfortunately, we kind of spiraled into chaos, which was very unfortunate. I think Chairman Wheeler handled himself very well. But we're going to continue to have a conversation on this bill. We've been very firm in our position that Iowa should be a merit-based state, and so that's why the bill comes forward, but we know that we're going to continue to work on it through the process.
Bias prevention related to merit-based?
At this point, on all the nuances of what's in the bill, I think that's why we had the subcommittee take that feedback, and there may be some things in there that we may have to look at as we move forward, but it was a very broad-based concept.
I had another question related to that bill, because another part of that bill would remove language in current code that says nobody shall be considered ineligible for licensure on the basis of their citizenship. And so that would take that out, so that apparently it would be legal to deny someone a license just based on their citizenship alone. And I mean, how is that consistent with merit? You may have non-citizens, immigrants from other countries who are highly qualified. So What's the thinking behind that?
Yeah, and I think similar to my answer with Katarina's question, that bill still has to work its way through the process. The committee and the members that have been working on that started at a very broad place, and I think it obviously has work to do before it gets through the committee, and then the Cox will decide it's something they want to take to the floor.
The Senate advanced public school funding through committee this week. They landed at 1.75%. They did address some of the feedback. 1.75%, maybe a little bit lower than what we've seen proposed in past years. Obviously, there was kind of some pushback from teachers and students and things like that. But they said they wanted to move it forward to get the conversations going because I think it's next week or 2 weeks from now that 30-day deadline hits. What do you think of 1.75% and where are you at?
I think our goal would be next week that we would be in a position where we could start taking action on that. I've had some preliminary conversations with the Senate as well as the governor on that. I think from the House's perspective, you're probably going to see us closer to a 2% or higher potentially, but more along the 2% lines than what maybe the Senate would be at this point in time. So hopefully next week I can get you something that's a little bit more clear on what the actual plan would be.
A few of us this morning heard from the governor and Unified researchers an early snapshot into their research on Iowa's cancer rates and what might be driving that. Very incomplete, still ongoing, but one of the early nuggets they talked about was among all the different cancer types that lung cancer was especially an issue, especially higher than in neighboring states and similar states. Your chamber moved out of subcommittee a bill to repeal the smoking ban exemption for casinos. Senate had a sub and killed it. Would you like to see that passed the Iowa House?
I think that's something we need to have a conversation about as a caucus, as part of the overall conversation around cancer. Obviously, that being a preliminary report, I hadn't thought about from the standpoint of how would we equate to that bill. But I think one thing that's positive that's come from that, I think it reflects some of the immediate findings that we've got in this preliminary report have reflected some of the things that we've been focusing on even last session, looking at SNAP benefit requirements, healthier foods on those, looking at some of our food pyramids and other things. So I think the preliminary results that we've gotten back is good data for us to get. As far as a bill like that and what the impacts will be on it, I don't think I'm in a position to say where we would want to go on that ultimately as a caucus. Because I think, as of right now, I don't think we have consensus on that issue. So.
One more bill that passed out of Education Committee yesterday would ban partnerships between public schools and public libraries. Some folks expressed concern that this could limit access for some students whose school libraries are public libraries are within the school, or their school libraries are public libraries. Is there interest in this to move forward?
Yeah, I think between that bill, there may be some other bills that are floating around when it comes to library. I think the best place I think ultimately as a House where we need to try to get to is make sure that accessing those explicit materials for minor, they would have a way that not only the parents are involved, but having separate sections. I think there's a way that we can find a level of compromise to make sure we're including parents and protecting kids. I know there'll be a couple other bills and what that looks like. So ultimately I would just say, I see us doing something, but I don't know if any of the bills in their current form are where we would land.
There was a.
All right.
There was a.
Laura gets the last one.
Sorry.
Stephen, you only took one today. Aaron took one. You guys, I'm boring you guys. No, I'm boring you guys. I get it.
There was a strange House Agriculture Subcommittee yesterday on a buffer strips bill where everybody who spoke about the bill was supportive of the bill, and then the two members of the majority caucus decided not to move it forward. So I'm just wondering, why hold a subcommittee on a bill if that everybody seems to support if you're not going to advance it? And do you have any comments on that?
I would have to follow up with the members. I'm unaware. I know of the bill, but I'm unaware of what transpired in the subcommittee.
Okay.
Mr. Speaker, could you give any clarity on where you're at in negotiations on eminent domain? Just given everything that has happened with the Senate, replacing the House bill this week, we saw the carbon dioxide and severance tax, bill pop up. Where are negotiations at?
Well, I think from the standpoint of negotiations, obviously seeing where the Senate ultimately gets and where if they're able to get a bill passed over, regardless if it's taking our bill, replacing with that language, seeing if they're able to get us a bill, and we'll continue to have conversations. I mean, we've been extremely clear, and our position has been pretty clear and fairly simple, which is whatever these bills look like need to include protections for landowners. Obviously, by replacing our bill that we sent over there, we don't feel, or not keeping parts of that in there, make it more difficult to find a level of resolution. So as long as we can get ourselves in a position where we can include property rights protections, we're more than happy to have those discussions. But I want to see what a bill may look like and if it makes it to the House, over from the Senate to the House.
So sorry, just to clarify, so are you not discussing across the table right now, you're waiting to see what bills
Well,
they send you
I
first?
mean, I think it would be helpful for us to actually get a bill that comes over, regardless of what that bill is. So I'm not going to comment on what their bills look like. I think it would be helpful for us to get a bill that comes back, regardless of what it is with language. At least it shows some level of movement that we would like to try to find a resolution to this issue.
Do you want to take their bill and put the House version back in?
I think it's way too early for us to make any of those decisions. Whatever we're going to do in the House is going to include protections for property owners. So that's the one constant in every time I've answered this for everybody. All right, now you get the last one because you were pouting. Go ahead.
So I was down in a subcommittee with Representative Thompson on the judicial performance reviews bill. A lot of concerns about sort of the way that the bill is currently structured and what data they're asking for. Brought up from several groups, including the judicial branch, who also mentioned safety concerns for judges, worried that bad actors could take information out of context and could contribute to threats against judges. Representative Thompson did say he was willing to take a lot of feedback and kind of work on that, but I guess from the safety perspective, do you have thoughts about what you want to make sure the bill does or doesn't do?
And I think we'll see that bill being modified as it moves forward. Representative Thompson has given me similar feedback that the bill in its current form, we know we have to continue to work on. One thing that I can say, which was interesting, we were all home this week for caucuses. I had a few people bring up to me that they were very appreciative in our forums and things back home. They were appreciative that there may be an actual place where this information is aggregated. So I think we need to take that feedback from groups, but at the same time, Iowans that are making these decisions when they go to vote on retention, it sounds like in the initial feedback we've gotten, we need to find a way that we can accomplish that. And so we're going to take feedback from all the groups. I've been having my own meetings as well and have told them, work with Representative Thompson. We're not saying that where we are right now is exactly where the bill needs to be moving forward. All right. Thanks, everybody.